In this video, we will be discussing Section 3, Economic Growth. How does an economy grow? We're going to focus on different factors that are out there that have an impact when it comes to the growth of an economy. The first term we're going to look at is called real GDP per capita. What that's referring to is if we were to take the total amount of citizens within a country and you take the total amount of GDP in that country and you were to divide it, you would find out what the value of one citizen would be in that country. So for instance, in the US, in this statistic, the GDP is $20.54 trillion. Divided by the amount of citizens that are in the US, you would find that the GDP per capita in the US is $62,794.59. So simply it takes the GDP divided by the total amount of citizens, and then what is remaining is what GDP per capita would be. Another way to see if the economy is growing or to grow an economy is something called capital deepening. Now, we've talked about physical and we talked about mental capital, mental and physical capital. So whenever you have capital deepening, you should see a growth in the economy. So what I'm referring to, if you look at this example here, if you're part of a construction team and you have 100 workers and they're all using shovels to dig a foundation for a skyscraper, well, it's going to take a lot of labor, heavy labor intensive. But then if you bring in some heavy machinery for construction, it's going to increase the job. It's going to deepen the capital, which is going to have an increase. Same thing with education. The more education you have, you are capital deepening in yourself by taking courses, by graduating, by reading. These are capital deepening techniques that are going to grow. So whenever a transition happens where you have more capital deepening that's taking place, it's going to have a natural effect on deepening or on growing the economy. And then we have saving and investment. Whenever you have a country that is saving money, that's increasing, this generally means the GDP is going to increase as well. And here's the reason behind this. If there is so much money that is able to be borrowed within a country, and once that money hits capacity, meaning that we're full capacity, we don't have any more money to lend out, well, then what countries do is they reach out to other countries to borrow more money. And when countries reach out to other countries to borrow money, the only way that one country is going to lend money to another is by interest. So let's say that Canada needed some money. They reach out to the US, we give them an interest rate, and they have to pay interest on top of the loan, which is known as a principal, for the amount of money that they borrowed. Well, instead of that interest staying within that country of Canada, now that money's be going to a different country. So whenever savings is very high within a nation, that usually means that there's a surplus of money that can be borrowed within the border of that country versus having to go outside of that country to borrow money. So savings is another impact part of growing an economy. Other conditions that we find: population, government, foreign trade. So for instance, just because an economy has a high population does not mean necessarily there's going to be growth taking place. If we were to use the country of India as an example, and when I'm reading this, it's a current statistic that I found, 1.25 billion people live in India. Well, their GDP per capita is only $1,500 per person. Versus the US, we have millions of people. Instead of billion, we have 62,000 plus for a GDP per capita. So even though the population will increase more of the labor, more of human capital, that doesn't mean necessarily you're going to see growth. And then government has an impact. Increasing taxes can have an impact on growth conditions. But also those taxes then can be used for more infrastructure, more schools, more transportation, more highways, light rails, libraries, whatever it is, it can increase infrastructure and education or whatever it might be. that will have an impact on growth as well. So just because it's higher taxes doesn't mean necessarily that it would have a negative impact on the economy. And then foreign trade, imports and exports. Imports, again, are products that are coming into the country. Exports are products that are leaving the country. So if your economy, if your country is based solely on bringing products in, it's going to have a massive impact on the products that are being produced within that country. So whenever products are brought in, it's an import. Whenever they leave, it's an export. And when you have more imports that are coming into your country than you're exporting, that means you have something called a trade deficit. Trade deficit means that the imports and exports are not balanced. You have one or the other. If you had to pick one, you'd want to probably have more exports, because that means you have more products within your country that the world wants versus that. Unfortunately for the US, we have lots of imports coming in, especially from China, which means that a lot of products that you see are made there. So we actually do have a trade deficit in the US. Now, there was a professor here named Robert Solow, and Solow had this idea that technology is an important factor when it comes to the economic growth within a country on a macro level. His idea was to increase efficiency, you gain producing more outputs without using more inputs. Technology. So for instance, right now we're able to continue education because we have technology to be able to meet using Schoology and some other pieces. We are more efficient than a school that maybe doesn't have one-to-one computers or do not have a LMS like Schoology. So our technological progress is a part of it. Now, he did a study, went back all the way back to 1929, all the way to 1982, and he found the average growth of GDP was about 2.92%, considering there was a bunch of ups and downs as far as Great Depression, and then we hit a couple of recessions. So overall average is 2.92%. And then he took that 2.92% and then he broke it down even more to find out that what percentage of that was involved in different parts of it. So that was his theory. Edward Denison is the individual who actually tested the theory and did all the statistics. Come to find out that labor was number one at 1.34%, technology was 1.02%, and then capital is 0.56%. So his theory was correct that technology is a huge impact on growing the economy. So when this video is being made, we are in a pandemic right now where technology has a brilliant opportunity to explode and grow in different opportunities. As the world progresses and evolves with this technology that's involved right now, the way of business being done, the way of education being done, will probably never go back to normal. And what I mean by that is that maybe not so much an impact even at our school in the high school, but an impact maybe on the elementary, because now they have so many assignments that are online, and students in elementary didn't really use Schoology before, but now they are. So it had an impact on that, and we're becoming more efficient and being able to be more better growth when it comes to that. So his model, again, technology is an important aspect when it comes to the growth of an economy. This is the end of chapter 12, section 3.